Hello and welcome to today's SGIA webinar, Digital Adoption in the Corrugated Segment. My name is Dan Marks, SGIA's Director of Content Development, and I'll be moderating today's program. On behalf of SGIA, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Bob Leahy. Bob has worked at the InfoTrends division of Keypoint Intelligence since 1997 and has long specialized in studying industrial applications for digital printing technologies. For several years, he's led a subscription consulting service that focuses on the use of color digital printers for production-level printing of packaging and labels. His clients for that consulting service and for custom consulting projects include digital printer and supplier manufacturers worldwide. He's also been author and co-author of many syndicated research reports, such as Color Digital Label and Package Printing Market Opportunities in China and What Do Converters Want? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bob Leahy. Bob?
Dan, thank you. And thank you all for taking the time to join us for this webinar. Dan has introduced me. I'll introduce our company just a little bit. Keypoint Intelligence is a specialized consulting firm. We focus on the digital print industry, and we supply management consulting and also engineering services and testing services to companies that make digital printers or their components or their supplies. We have about 100 plus people around the world. We're headquartered in New Jersey here in the US. And as Dan has mentioned, we have our clients globally. Today, I've got some very simple goals for us. One is to give you sort of the lay of the land about color digital printing for corrugated, and also to show the results of the recent market research that SGIA has done in combination with Keypoint Intelligence. As to how we did this work, the first part of it, the description of the lay of the land, that relates to my work as the director of the Color Digital Label and Packaging Consulting Service. So I'll be giving you some of the things that I've learned about digital print for corrugated from that work, which has now been going on for about 10 years. As to the survey of packaging converters, this was just finished in January of this year, so it's pretty fresh. And that's with converters of corrugated here in the US and Canada. I should say as well what it is that we mean by corrugated. For the sake of precision, this is board media made from multiple layers, normally paper-based layers. Usually it's a top liner layer that receives print if that board is printed. A fluted medium layer, which goes between the top liner and a bottom liner layer. I've mentioned that it's normally paper-based, but it's not all paper-based. There is corrugated that's made from plastic, but most of what we'll be talking about is in fact paper-based, and that liner layer may be coated or uncoated. It may be white, it may be brown. Mainly, corrugated is used for secondary packaging and also for displays, which we'll be showing you pictures of momentarily. But there is some printing of primary packaging that's made from corrugated also. Of the world's many vertical industries, food industries and beverage industries are the top users of corrugated, but gazillion other industries also use corrugated. So where food and beverages account for well over 40% of the use of corrugated in the world, many other vertical industries, from automotive to healthcare to personal care products, consumer electronics, they all use corrugated. And as we'll be seeing, more and more of those industries use corrugated with fine color printing on that top liner layer. In fairness, though, I have to point out that corrugated got its start as brown boxes, and in the ocean of corrugated that's manufactured worldwide, a big chunk of it is still either unprinted or minimally printed. Corrugated got its start as a means to transport primary packages in bulk and in high numbers in one box. Corrugated, as you can just see looking at it, is a sturdy board media that can be made into packaging of all shapes and sizes. Maybe half of the market is either unprinted or minimally printed. The other half of the market, it's quite variable, all the way out to a small share of that ocean of corrugated that gets up to 10 colors printed either in offset or with flexography. So in the history of corrugated, and that does figure here, the brand owners of the world, the manufacturers of products, have gone way beyond using corrugated for transport. They've recognized that those are big surfaces on a lot of these secondary packages, ones that can carry marketing imagery, brand imagery, and that, of course, implies fine color printing by one means or another. So the term shelf-ready packaging or retail-ready packaging is now well known. And that's, of course, packaging made normally from corrugated that can go right on the shelf without rearrangement of the or unloading of the primary products inside it. We see as well freestanding displays made from corrugated that are finely printed and often in very interesting shapes and configurations. These are big markets for companies who are considering digital printing for corrugated. So some examples of shelf-ready packaging are here. I think these would be familiar to most of you. Corrugated is used for primary packaging also. Corrugated, I mentioned, is mainly going to be 3 layers, but it can be many layers. It can also be thin grades, such as what they call a microflute, which is often an N flute. But different grades of corrugated are available in terms of thickness, sturdiness, numbers of layers. At the thin end of the spectrum, these are essentially folding cartons made from corrugated board. And they're beloved by brands because of their sturdiness. While they are thin, they have greater strength than the single ply media that normally is used for folding cartons. There are some basic needs that drive corrugated print, and many of them are ones that are familiar to you if you've listened to the earlier webinars about flexible packaging and folding cartons. Brand owners worldwide want to mass customize what they offer. In other words, to target markets with great precision, to offer packaging in shapes and designs that are appealing to different family sizes, with print that is in different languages, suitable for different age groups or for different genders, and that wish to customize the marketing pulls through to the corrugated market as well. We want to engage users with new designs and intriguing appearance. As I've mentioned already, corrugated implies big in most of its packaging, so that means it's a big surface that can carry marketing imagery. Corrugated has become strategic, not just for transport, but for marketing. A sign of that has been the growth of litholamination as a means of putting fine graphics on corrugated. That, of course, involves pre-printing the top liner layer in offset and then including it by lamination in the actual board stock. That is about as fine an image quality as you can get. In fairness, I should point out that that same layer can be pre-printed by flexography beautifully, and we have lots of examples of it. This image here could indeed be pre-print flexo, or it could be litholamination. But this fine printing is wide open to digital printing as an extra market, and we've got multiple vendors of printers who are now targeting this and have some remarkable digital printers that are available to print, in particular, the short runs that are associated with such printing of corrugated. This is not the SGIA survey result here, but something from a couple of years ago. And this is a survey that our company, Infotrends, the management consulting division of Keypoint Intelligence, did in 2016 with US packaging converters. And we asked at your company, which of the following best describes the need to print short runs of high quality laminated corrugated media by any means? That could be analog, could be digital, could be offset lamination, preprint flexo, whatever. I think you see here pretty clearly that even 2 years ago, these companies said that there is a growing need to have that fine printing available for their customers. So that's, fairly recent history, but still 2 years is a long time in the progress of digital printing. Even 2 years ago, digital printing was a candidate to do some of this fine printing by lamination. And indeed, it was growing and is still growing. So a capsule history of inkjet in corrugated, well, it starts probably 20 years ago and using multipass print technology. So this is HP Cytex, Inca, with big flatbed printers that have a head that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth across the media, or vice versa. It moves the media underneath a stationary head. In any event, printing mainly prototypes in multiple passes using UV inks. And some converters operate these machines themselves. They own them. Meanwhile, in many cases, they are owned by print service providers who serve those converters as partners, outsourced partners. But in the recent history of inkjet in packaging in general and in printing in general, there's been the advent of wide line heads, and they came first to commercial print. So the printing of books, reports, direct mail. These are high-speed inkjet heads that are broad. They go across a line that can be as much as a meter across. They came from companies such as HP, from Screen, Fujifilm. And these same line heads started to come to the single pass printing of corrugated just a few years ago, with vastly higher productivity than is possible with a multi-pass printer. This is, again, that same group of respondents in 2016, and we were asking them, what's the status 2 years ago of color digital printing for corrugated at your company? So even 2 years ago, the majority of the market was saying that we use it for making proofs and prototypes, yes, but we also print some short production runs on it. So those same companies that were making wide format multi-pass printers for prototypes in corrugated, those are most of what the market was experienced with, those printers and others that were less automated, just wide format inkjet. But even on those printers, 2 years ago, the production runs were starting in multipass. So that's the market that single pass is starting to join up with at about the same time. For the sake of precision, I'm just going to note that multipass looks like this on the left, where the print head moves back and forth and back and forth, and the media is fed underneath it. In fairness, there are solutions where the media moves back and forth underneath the head. But single pass, using line heads, that's what you see on the right there. We print all the colors at once, all the way across the bed, and that bed moves at very high speed. So today, there are lots of options for digital printers for corrugated, and they range very, very widely from highly automated to manually fed. In the upper right, the Inca Onset X3. This is a multi-pass printer, very automated in terms of feeding and offloading. This is a printer that you can run all night, probably unattended, and come to find 1,000 displays finally printed the next morning. The page-wide T1100S, that's going to be printing a web of liner paper. So not the full board stock like the Inca Onset, but rather the liner paper at very high speed, up to 600 feet per minute. It may even be higher than that due to some recent changes in that equipment. But that's for use in what they call preprint corrugated. Upper left, Zonta Accelerographics 4800. This is a manually fed model. It's small. In contrast to the other printers that you see here, including Barbaran Jetmaster, this is not very expensive. It's only about $130,000. Prints a 48-inch wide sheet. It's owned by some product manufacturers, such as auto parts manufacturers. It's owned by some small print service providers. Barbaran Jetmaster, like Accelerographics, like Inca Onset, that's printing full finished corrugated sheets at high speed. So we have here both multi-pass options, Inca Onset, and single-pass options, including a manually fed one. I've mentioned board stock and maybe the term post-printing. I certainly should explain that a little bit. The market tends to talk about post-printing and pre-printing, and post-printing means we print the whole board after it's formed. And you see some examples of printers here. HP Cytex 17,000, Durst Row 1000. Those are multi-pass printers for post-printing. New Solution NS Multi. That's another manually fed product, not very expensive, less than $100,000, I believe. And that is post-printing board. Pre-printing, I've mentioned that earlier with the T1100S, page-wide T400S and T490S, which is a successor to that. Those instead are pre-printing systems because they pre-print the liner paper before it goes into the corrugator to make the finished board. But there's a small crowd of companies that are offering high-speed single-pass systems now, and I mentioned just one here, EFI Nozomi. This has, I think, a couple of installations in Spain and a couple more coming in North America. And do look at the spec there. These are big sheets and 6,600 per hour possible. Note also that you can print from 14 point up to triple wall media with this. This transport can handle essentially single ply paperboard all the way up to about the thickest grade of corrugated that's available. Very automated, including 100% inspection. That's how sophisticated these single pass solutions are. So I'm going to move on to the corrugated converters survey that SGIA has led with help from Keypoint Intelligence. We interviewed 50 corrugated converters in the US and Canada, and for most of them, this is what they do as their main business. There were occasional companies in the group that printed other types of packaging. They overwhelmingly do their work with analog print technologies. So you see here a rotary die cutter that has its own 4-color flexo printing as part of its basic lineup. So in addition to analog printing, many of them have some type of digital print in their operations, or they buy it outside. And that's normally going to be multi-pass printing. The installed base of single-pass systems is still very small. But all these companies have elaborate finishing equipment and lots of other equipment for handling the media, for finishing it, for packaging it, and so on. These are very sophisticated companies with challenging schedules of jobs. They have design requirements. Software tools are basic to almost all of these companies. As to who they serve, we asked our converters, just check off all the industries that are your main customers, and you see the prominence of food industries and beverage industries, but also how spread the results are among other industries: household chemicals, nutritional supplements, apparel, consumer electronics. Corrugated is sort of a universal print category, and it is everywhere. But again, as with fast-moving consumer goods that are often held by corrugated packaging, much of that is in the food industry or the beverage industry. We asked our converters, tell us which print technologies you operate in your companies and how many of the units do you have. Again, some of the converters that we interviewed are printing other things. So you see at least a couple of items in here that you wouldn't normally see printing corrugated. But a clear message is that flexography is the top technology for these corrugated converters. Offset printing also is key here. You see one or two printers or presses in general. In the case of flexography, it's 4 on average in our group. We had a good number of pretty substantial companies in our survey group. I've mentioned already how challenging the business is for these companies in terms of handling jobs and design and so on. So this is an unsurprising picture of the software that they own. Structural design is owned by the vast majority of these companies. Artworking, file preparation is next. Workflow management. This is probably the most important bar of all in this chart here in my book. I say that because everything that I've learned in observing the people who are in the trenches with packaging converting indicates that the ones who are most efficient and most profitable generally have invested in the best and most capable workflow tools. As we'll see in a minute, these converters of corrugated have very good reason to want to have efficient workflow management. But in the meantime, I'll just note that these folks all have analog presses, and as a result, they all have pre-press activities for, among other things, preparing plates. One interesting finding is the very high share of our respondents who buy their plates outside. What I think is going on here is that these are big plates. These printing presses can be 60 inches across. It can be bigger. It's a tall order to make those plates, and for some of these companies, it's preferable to have somebody else do that, or more economic to do so. So you see the other shares for other options there, much smaller: Flexo Direct, computer plate, conventional plate making. As to the numbers of jobs that the converters handle in a month, average month, this is how it netted out. Around 350 for the whole group. And I'll pick the median number there, but the mean or average number is quite similar. It's the rare respondent who has less than 20 jobs per month. We have a chunk of our respondents who claim to have 500 or more jobs per month. Again, we had a pretty good incidence of big companies in our group. And in fairness, I should note that corrugated converting does include a good admixture of some very small companies. You can be a participant in this market and have only a dozen employees, but at that level, you probably are just a sheet printer, and you're very dependent on other suppliers for media, for plates, and so on. We asked this question, and it's one that I've asked in the other print categories as well, packaging categories. For your packaging jobs on conventional presses and on digital printers, what percentages do you estimate are in the following run lengths in terms of media use? So that's what share of 100% is short run, and what share of 100% is medium run, what share of 100% is long run. Let's look first at just the analog printing. So this is what those flexo, mainly flexo presses and some offset presses print in terms of jobs that are cut by run lengths. The things I would note here are that we've got a pretty good incidence of very long jobs in here, even 200,000 square feet or more. It's at that end of the spectrum, I should note, that the analog press technologies excel. They print at high speed. They print with a very low per image cost at that end of the spectrum. But the other notable thing about this chart is the fairly strong incidence of short run jobs on flexo and offset presses. So it looks like about 15 or 16% of jobs are less than 1,000 feet on these analog presses. That's a lot. That's a lot of activity to deal with in terms of pre-press, in terms of changeover, and these short-run jobs are printed on analog printers. In fairness, I have to note one of the other things I've learned over many years is respect for the manufacturers of analog presses. And I say that in particular because they have improved very much their press's ability to print short runs efficiently. So they get a lot of credit for that, but they often are not a better or more economic option for those short runs compared to digital. But let's look at digital now. So where did the run lengths end up with digital? Mostly they're short runs. You see a very high share of them, 45%, less than 1,000 square feet. This can include probably mainly multi-pass, wide format flatbeds, but it can also include single pass printers, including some very big ones. We think we had a few of those true single pass production level printers in our group of respondents. But note here, not everybody in our group has got a digital printer. Meanwhile, all of them have analog presses, but very strong incidence of jobs that are short runs for the digital side, but even some runs of 50,000 square feet or more on digital. If you have that EFI Nozomi printer that can print 55,000 square feet per hour, you can do these long run jobs. Same for Barbaran, same for HP page wide, same for Core Stream. What we think is going to happen as predictors of the future is that these bars are going to move, the orange bars are going to start moving to the right over time as more digital single pass printers are in the market, and they're attacking more of these longer jobs. So one other thing to look at is the results mean and median, mean being average, median being half above and half below. The best estimate of actual experience is on the median, I think, and that means that the median response for analog presses was 15,000 square feet. The median response, median run length for digital, just 3,000 square feet. But probably that digital median is going to creep up over time as single pass solutions come into the market and become more influential. For now, what do we know about the future? Well, we know what the converters say about the future in terms of short runs. In general, they say that short runs are growing, and you see that here. It's the rare converter who's going to say that it's declining, and most of the market says that it's either growing or at least stable. We asked as well, within 5 years, color digital printing will be widely used for production printing in my field. How much do you agree with that? And as you see here, a chunk of the market strongly agrees, and another chunk of the market more agrees than disagrees. So I think the word has gotten out that the multi-pass printers that are highly automated and this new generation of single-pass printers that's so high speed that they're coming, and the people in the field, many of them expect that these printers are going to have a role in production printing for them. We asked our 50, is your company considering buying any type of color digital printing equipment in the next 12 months to print corrugated packaging? So nearly a third said yes. That's a small group, that's 15. But here's what they said they are considering. So 15, not statistically valid because it's too small a group, but certainly indicative. Their top choices for consideration are either a highly automated multi-pass printer or a high-end single-pass printer, such as EFI, Barbaran, Durst, and so on. So, the view is split in terms of mind share. Both approaches are going to get looked at by companies that are thinking about buying in the next 12 months. In fairness, there are other options cited here. They include the preprint high-speed system from HP, either the T400S, T490S, which is its recent successor, or the T1100S. Some people are considering very low-end equipment, but very capable, from Zante and also New Solution, not very costly at all compared to these other devices. This is another question that I've asked all three groups of packaging converters that have been the focus of the SGI research. For the following print services or features, what share of your clients would be willing to pay a premium? We gave the option to say 0. None of my clients would pay extra for this service. And we gave other options all the way out to 50% or more would pay extra for this service. And you see the choices that we've given them: 48-hour job turnaround, variable data, one print job for less than 100 pieces, in other words, prototyping, one print job for 50 or more versions. Think mass customization of a package. On average, that's the response you've got here, from 14 to 20% of clients are willing to pay extra for these various services, with 48-hour job turnaround getting the strongest reading. These things, in 3 cases, are services that analog presses can render, maybe not as economically, though, as digital. In 1 case, variable data printing, that's something that only digital printing can do. My observation to you is that these services, which a good share of the market on average will pay extra for, these are all things that digital printing can help with. 48-hour job turnaround for a short run. Well, we can do that with digital printing pretty conveniently. We don't have to make a plate for it. The prepress is electronic. We can do it quickly. Variable data, again, you've got to have a digital printer to do that. One print job for less than 100 pieces. That's a really short run. And again, could be prototypes, could be 100 displays or 99 displays for that number of stores. Digital printing is primed to do that. Same for one print job for 50 or more versions. In cases where the image really varies 50 times, not just a change in color, that's a pretty tough job to set up in analog. Think of all the plates that you'd need to do that. And yet we can do that digitally with essentially electronic prepress. It's hard work, requires some workflow and design software, but with skill and practice, you can do it very quickly. So all these things, I think, augur well for digital printing for corrugated. This leads me to my last slide. These are my conclusions, recommendations. Analog printing is not going to go away. Neither is analog finishing of corrugated. Analog technologies are going to dominate the volume long term, in my view. But I believe digital print is growing strongly as a complement to analog systems for corrugated printing. And I believe that long term, digital printing is going to share the field with flexo and with offset. It will be in corrugated what it already is in the label industry. It will be placed side by side with analog systems. It will handle the short runs well and some long runs also. When it takes away short runs, it will allow analog systems to print the jobs where analog presses excel, and that of course is the long runs. If you are a print service provider, if you're already a corrugated converter, my recommendation to you is to study the options that are digital for the production in your business. Come to the Print United SGIA show, come to other trade shows where you're going to see the equipment, meet the vendors, be part of the discussion about the technology. That really is the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bob, for the presentation. I do have a couple questions here. First of all, when we look at some of these digital systems you mentioned, like what ink systems are being used in those? Is it mainly UV? Is there electrophotographic? What's being used?
Very good. Nearly all of the multipass systems that are in use are using UV inkjet. There are rare water-based multipass flatbeds using aqueous inkjet, and Gico of Italy is one example. There may be one or more others. In the single pass equipment, it's sort of a split between UV curing and aqueous inkjet. HP PageWide is aqueous inkjet. Barbaran is UV inkjet.
Mm-hmm.
The others split similarly. I think that we're going to see more aqueous in the world in the next few years, for various reasons. But UV has such advantages in terms of its reliability, in terms of its ability to print a wide range of surfaces. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go away. It will be split between the two, especially in single pass.
Okay, and to what degree do you think? I know there was the Barbaran system, there was the Zante system you mentioned that the price point is not super high. To what degree do you think like small scale, let's say beverage or food manufacturers would bring some of those systems in-house to decorate their own packaging if they could purchase, let's say, pre-cut boxes and just do the decoration part? Is there more of that going on?
Yeah, my instinct is that it's the rare manufacturer who's going to be printing corrugated with fine graphics in his or her own operations. Mm-hmm. There are exceptions to that. At the low-cost end of the spectrum, and that is the Zante Accelerographics and the NS Multi from New Solution, those printers are placed with some product manufacturers. I know that auto parts manufacturers own a few the, or possibly many, I don't know, of the Zonte equipment. It's not very expensive, about $130,000 only, pretty productive, and it's good for what we call high mix, low volume type printing, which occurs in the auto parts business. The printers that you saw that are automated, both multi-pass and single pass, are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The Inca, the HP Cytex, the Durst multi-pass systems, they're $1 million or more.
Right.
The single pass systems from HP PageWide, from EFI Nozomi, from Barbaran, those are from a few million to more than a few $1 million. And those will be adopted by corrugated converters who want to operate them around the clock and can justify their costs that way.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Bob, for the presentation today. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your involvement in all three of our webinars we've done focusing on the digital printing in the packaging sector. For those of you who joined us to listen to this program, please go to sgia.org. You can download the reports that upon which these presentations are based. And Bob, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
You can email me or call me. I enjoy talking to people who are in the trenches, as they say. So we welcome contact. And if you have a question after the webinar, I'd be happy to chat with you.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. And we will see you online again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Ed.